Good morning, Miramar, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Tamara G. As always, check us out on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. And with me today, I have Chad Leibundguth. He is the district president for Robert Half. For the state of Florida as well as Louisiana. And we're going to be talking today about the pandemic 5 years later. First of all, can't even believe that it's been 5 years, Chad, but also the effects that that has had on hiring, people trying to find jobs, people, companies looking for jobs, all of that good stuff. So, welcome to the show, Chad.
Well, yeah, it's great to meet you and thanks for having us. It's been a roller coaster 5 years, to say the least, from pre-COVID to during COVID to now where we are today. So happy to walk through what we're seeing in today's market.
Yeah, we just were talking, about 2 weeks ago when the month first started, that it's truly been 5 years since the world shut down. And I even remember what happened to me at my job. I'm in radio, and there were a lot of positions that were eliminated, but that was everywhere. That wasn't just my industry, that was a little bit of everything. And
Mhm.
people were doing two and three jobs. How has it changed in the 5 years? That we are post-COVID now.
Yeah, again, back to sort of reassessing 5 years and the roller coaster. I think in today's market, companies are very cautious in terms of how they engage hiring and when it comes to laying people off and managing their workforce. And I think that's not a bad thing. I think companies are certainly wanting to make sure that they're properly staffed. Um, we went through a few years after COVID when there was just a hiring boom. And I'm sure many of your listeners or friends or family that got two or three job offers, lots of counter offers, lots of opportunity to increase your income. And then the market kind of settled down a little bit. And I would classify the market today as almost a little bit more normalized in terms of where we're at. It's not a guarantee that you're going to find a job right away. It may take you a little bit of time. You may want to work your network a bit more. You may want to invest in your career a bit more. Make sure you're doing everything you can to stay relevant and to be marketable. And really, take a long game in terms of your career approach and where do you want to go. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think the market has come full circle from where we were pre-COVID to kind of where we are now in terms of the of the employer and employee relationship.
Well, I mean, obviously, with what Robert Half does, I mean, you guys staff companies, you help people find good people to work for them. When you mentioned, it's kind of back to normal, will there ever be a normal? I know some people that have not gone back into an office yet. Now, I wish I could be one of those people, but the nature of my job, I have to be in a studio.
Yeah.
But there are so many people that have, and then here's the thing, Chad, too, a lot of people are choosing not to go back. What have you guys found when you're trying to place people and they say,
Mhm.
well, can I work from home?
Yeah. And I think in a perfect world, that scenario is what everybody would want, the flexibility to either work 100% remote or have some sort of hybrid. More and more, we're seeing the fully remote roles are harder to come by. The hybrid approach seems to be some of the new normal, to use that phrase. What is normal? Well, I think now normal is some variation of hybrid where people are in an office 3 days, maybe 4 days a week. Maybe there's a day or two of flexibility where you get a chance to work from home. And there's some benefits to that. I think some of our recent survey stats show almost 80% of folks in the workforce feel good about their career and they're satisfied with their career by and large because of some of the flexibility that they now enjoy. And I think that's a good thing. And, we hear people talk about hours they used to spend commuting back and forth before COVID and how much time and energy and resources that brought. And now, maybe I've got 2 days a week where I don't have to get in a car and that means I can be more productive or have a little bit better work-life balance. And that's a good thing. The downside of that can be some of what companies are battling with culture and with connection and with employee engagement. And to some level, how do you onboard and bring on a new hire quickly without having them connected and in the office with their peers. And I think that's one of the challenges that companies are trying to navigate their way through. But I
Well,
think
our
the
company
hybrid,
did that. Our company did that. We the salespeople, on air, of course, we have to be there every day.
right,
But the salespeople and support staff, they come in Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's it. And
right.
everybody seems to be happy with that. But what I wanted to ask as a follow-up to what you were saying about the culture and, bringing on somebody new and trying to figure out how to do that when, again, you only come to work on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
Is that really important to have that culture? Like, do you really need that? I'm doing the job, regardless of what it is. And, most people will say that they get more work done at home because they're not sitting at the coffee machine talking for 30 minutes with somebody.
True, and I think there's some truth to all of that. I think that the counter argument is what's lost when there's not as much of a collaborative team. When you and I aren't at the water cooler, we may miss opportunities to talk about projects or talk about areas that we could improve or become more efficient. I think that's becoming a bigger and bigger reality for companies to navigate through. And again, the other big area is as I'm looking to hire and bring on new people, how do I sort of involve them in the company culture and in the collaborative approach of their colleagues and how they work together? It's very hard to do that remotely. It takes longer. Studies show it does take longer for a fully remote person to learn a new job, to learn a system, to learn an operating model. It just takes longer. So it sort of stunts growth in some respects. Our most recent survey did show that almost 1 in 5 people don't feel as connected to their colleagues like they used to. Um, I think if I'm a company these days, retention is important. I don't want to lose my good people. I want to make sure they're happy, that they're engaged, that they're fulfilled. And part of that is the culture, because people want to they want to align their career to the mission of the company and what's important to them and their values. And that's really hard to do in a fully remote scenario.
Mhm. Do you feel, Chad, that people, when you offer them a position, Robert Half is going to, offer this position through this company, and you tell them all of the things that they can get, all of the benefits of this job. Are people willing in this day and time, 5 years after COVID and the pandemic, to take less money to be able to work those remote jobs or to, come in twice a week? Are they willing to take less time off or whatever, less money, whatever that may include?
Yes, I think our advice to companies would be to look at the holistic role, not only salary, duties, but flexibility in terms of the work, hybrid in office and at home, the benefits. I think it's a complete package that people are looking at. And it is true that people may be willing to take a little bit less money for a fully remote role. And the cost benefit analysis of that in terms of paying for parking or having to buy clothes to wear to work, or I can make my own lunch at home. In some cases, there's a cost benefit to that, plus work-life balance. So the sweet spot, it seems to be somewhere in the middle of a, hybrid, flexible arrangement where you're in the office a few days and you're at home a few days. And I think the companies that are willing to embrace that are finding success hiring and attracting good talent. The companies that are more rigid and not, either willing to or able to are finding a bit more of a challenge in terms of hiring good talent.
And that has, been in the news. You heard Chase, Bank, JP Morgan Chase wants everybody to come back in. Amazon wants
Right.
everybody to come back in. How has that worked for them, since you guys do all the data and are finding them people to work for their companies?
Well, I think it poses a bit more of a challenge.
Mhm.
You have to counteract the inflexibility with something else. So maybe it is more money or a career path or more benefits. There have been news articles about companies that are really thinking through what the office looks like, and do you have a gym on site again, and do you have, an appealing office environment that people want to be at that, maybe has some perks and benefits that are appealing. I think that's important. Again, companies that are less flexible are probably finding it a little bit more harder to attract good talent or and keep good people too.
If you're just now tuning in, thank you so much for watching. I'm Tamara G, and with me is Chad Leibundguth. He is the district president for Robert Half for Florida and Louisiana. They, of course, are a staffing agency. They are worldwide and well known. And so we're talking today about the effects of the pandemic 5 years later, how it has affected jobs, the economy, everything. One thing I want to ask you about, Chad, is there have been reports too that a lot of times when you see a job being posted, it's not necessarily a job. There's
Mhm.
companies, what do they call them? Ghost jobs, or I'm not even really sure, but how that's horrible. Because if I'm looking for a job and I
Yes.
think this job fits me, and I call you guys and say, hey, I see that you guys are doing this, and people find out that it's not even a real job. They're not even really hiring.
Yeah, that can be very, very frustrating. And we have all probably heard that statistic of 8 million jobs or whatever, 10 million at the height. It was maybe 12 million. I can't remember, a large amount of quote unquote open jobs. I think what we find is there's a myriad of reasons why maybe there's a role that's posted and not being filled. Some of it has to do with a company's urgency in terms of how fast they want to get a position filled. And that could depend upon the time of the year. It could depend upon their business outlook.
Mhm.
Sometimes companies decide I want to make a hire, and then a few months later, the business has softened a little bit. So they say, let's just hold, let's wait a minute. Sometimes it has to do with finding the right person. And I think more and more companies are being very particular and specific in terms of what they're looking for, what experience you might need to bring to the table, your technology background, maybe industry. And for some of the real specialized jobs, it does take time to find that right candidate. So it may be 3, 4, 5 or more weeks that the job sits open before the right candidate applies. Sometimes it's a recruiting tool and companies are it's branding. I just want to make sure that people know we're always hiring. And so for some companies, they may take that approach. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but that's certainly a reality. And I think in today's market, things can change. I think there's a 24-hour news cycle with all sorts of news coming at us, and sometimes companies think maybe we better wait. Maybe we need to see what's going to happen with the next policy thing or what's happening in the world or what's happening in the market. And that could cause some companies to decide to slow down hiring from time to time. By and large, I think it does come down to, for some of the roles, finding the right candidate.
And speaking of finding that right candidate, what are you guys looking for at Robert Half? What is it, or the industries that people should be applying for or going to school for or trying to get those
Sure.
skills?
Well, in Florida specifically, we've benefited from a very positive business environment, and whether that's housing, lots of people have moved to Florida over the last few years. Been a lot of housing, construction, commercial construction, healthcare is a big industry in this state. There's been other financial services. So, I think if not so much the industry, because there are always going to be ebbs and flows in terms of industries that may be moving or hiring. Our advice would be to the candidate, certainly have a broad background, invest in technology. Almost every job has some technology component. You've got to learn a software. You've got to be very technically sound so that you can learn and adapt to the company's systems that you may be working for. And so, you've got to be very technology sound. And I think there are some people that are doing a really good job of ensuring that they invest in themselves, take classes. There's lots of good online resources that you can use to make sure that you're staying up to speed in technology. Chat GPT and other language learning models can help you learn many different things. The common thread from most companies that we are working with has to do with the technology of the candidate and what software have they used and how quickly can they learn our systems. That seems to be a very, very common thread for many of the companies we work with.
And so, speaking of working, so I'm just going to put this out there. I am in the sandwich generation. I'm not quite that old, but I'm also not that young. And
Hmm.
so, where do you go if you're looking to change careers, particularly, with if they see something that you guys have posted, Robert Half is,
Sure.
hiring for this or whatever. Um, do I, what do I do? Do I even have a chance? Because I am in that kind of, wouldn't even call it a sweet spot. I'd call it I'm not too old, but I'm not too young spot.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great question, and there's a lot of people that fall within that category. Robert Half, I would certainly encourage everyone to visit our website, MiramarFL.gov. We specialize in different areas, including accounting and finance, legal, IT, administrative, and some other areas. So if you fall within those buckets, there's an opportunity for us to help you. But generally speaking, I think if you're thinking about making a career move, start with the industry that you're in and find out if there are other companies within your industry that may be able to leverage your experience and help you further your career there. You look at the roles that you've had or that you're currently in, and maybe it's a different industry, but a similar role. So, perhaps I could take the experience I've got and move it to a new industry. Those are the two best resources or leverage points for the experience that you may have. It's very hard to switch roles completely and industries completely at the same time because you're essentially starting all the way over.
Right. Right.
And you've got a lot of great experience. There's a lot of people in your shoes with a lot of great experience that you can help another company in the same industry or in a different industry, but the same type of role that you're in. So I would start there. There's lots of great resources online, whether it's job boards or use LinkedIn. But the statistics are most people find their next opportunity through their network. Who do you know? Who have
Really?
you worked with? What peers? Who did you go to school with? So that's the value of keeping your network up to date. LinkedIn is a great resource for that, obviously. But outside of LinkedIn, it's just, building relationships and building your network. The odds are that may be your avenue to the next role.
Okay, so you're bringing that up, building the network again, 5 years after COVID and the pandemic. Are we back to networking like we used to? Like, are people going to mixers and doing different things? I guess nobody's scared of getting COVID and dying anymore.
Right. And we are definitely getting back to where we were pre-COVID with um, meet and greets, associations, different groups. Again, based on what you're looking for, there's probably a group out there that you may want to get involved in, and they may meet monthly or regularly. And that's a chance for you to meet new people within your industry or your business sector, grow your network, maintain your network, kind of all the way back to the first part of our conversation. It's part of the challenge of this remote workforce is in some cases, people have lost their connections a little bit. I'm not around my colleagues as much as I used to be. I may have lost a little bit of that connection. If that's you, it's okay. You can change it. Just spend some time really investing in your network. Get plugged into an association or a networking group in your area. They're back meeting, pretty regularly is what we're finding.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, thank you so much for watching Good Morning Miramar. We have Chad Leibundguth. He is the um, district president for Robert Half for Florida and Louisiana. And we might as well bring this up too, talking about Florida. Yes, you mentioned earlier how so many people have been moving into, our state in the last 5 years, but so many people want to leave our state as well. Do you guys see where the state is open to, hiring people from outside of Florida or companies even doing that anymore? They, if I'm in Texas and I want to move to Florida, will they even consider me?
They will. And I think part of that has to do with your background, your experience. I think companies are finding for really skilled roles, they may have to look outside of Florida. And Robert Half, we've got offices all over the country. And so oftentimes we work with our counterparts in different states to find out who's got somebody with this particular industry or this software experience. And then we work with the company to talk through a relocation situation, or would you be open to someone fully remote for that type of a role? And some clients might be based on the skill. So I think by and large, what we're still seeing are more people moving to Florida than leaving. There still seems to be a little bit more of inflow versus outflow, which is I think benefiting the state by and large. There are companies still moving operations here, so that's a good thing too. That just brings more opportunity and more for the residents and people of Florida to take advantage of.
Right, but a lot of people are leaving. You've got to admit
Sure,
that, Chad, because
sure.
they like to pay us in sunshine here, versus dollars. Because I'm sure that you've heard this from, applicants and even from the people that, you guys are helping, the companies that you're trying to help. Oh, we only want to pay this much. Well, that doesn't even pay for my rent here, particularly
Yeah,
in South Florida.
yeah.
You got a one bedroom going for $2,000.
No,
So,
it's true. The cost of living has definitely risen quite a bit over the last few years, and that's a big challenge. I do think companies will have to address that, or you're going to lose good people. Ultimately, if you're not paying a good market rate for the role that you've got, there are options. There are either people that are willing to move out of state, or people that may find a remote job somewhere else, or another company across the street may be willing to give you a little bit more money. So it's an ongoing challenge that our clients have to look at, companies have to look at. Are you paying market rate? We publish a salary guide every year that kind of helps companies, look through different roles, and are you, market based in terms of your compensation? What are your peers doing? It's a moving target, quite frankly. It's something that really always needs to be looked at.
okay. Well, I had mentioned earlier, I'm in the sandwich generation. And then, of course, you have the Gen Zers out here who will get a job and quit a job in a week.
True.
So that really is true. I mean, I don't have any Gen Zers. I have friends who have Gen Zers, but I have heard that. And so, how do you guys handle that when you get an applicant who's 23, but they have everything that this, position is looking for and this company is looking for? Do you guys go that extra mile and take that chance on that person, or what do you do?
Well, not an easy answer, but
Right.
it does depend. I do think what people learned over the last few years is stability matters. If you're changing jobs every year, companies are going to scratch their head and think, are you here for the long term? If I invest and hire you, are you going to leave me in a year? And that I think is not a good place to be from a career perspective. So I think before you make a career change, you do have to sort of look at the bigger picture in terms of your work history, your tenure. Have you had good conversations where you're at to try to find out if there's a career growth opportunity or a way to learn something new? Do you have to leave your current employer to accomplish your career goals? Oftentimes people miss that. It's the most obvious thing is, have you talked to your boss about what you're looking for and maybe why you're not happy, whether it's your compensation or your career track or what you're currently doing? There's a high potential chance that maybe they could do something to give you what you're looking for so you don't have to leave and you can keep tenure where you're at. I think what we learned, especially in 2021, 2022, we had people that moved jobs a few times, and that ended up being a negative for them.
Wow.
And it can certainly turn into, well, you're a job hopper, you don't stay at a role, you may not be willing to commit. And as a company, that's something that's concerning for me. I may not want to take a risk in hiring you only to have you leave me in 9 months or a year for something else. So
Well, it's so funny because we had that question. For those who don't know, I'm a radio personality. That's my other job, my real job. But we actually talked about this on air, my radio partner and I, and we were surprised by the number of calls that came in that people thought it was okay to just up and quit a job and have two and three jobs in a
mhm,
year. I couldn't I'm from the old school. First of all, you give a 2 weeks notice,
that's right.
you know.
That's
Um,
right.
you'll even try to stay on longer if you can, to help them in the transition for when they hire somebody else. It's just a way that you do things. But we had so many people that were like, no, it's okay. It's 2025, and if I don't like this job, I'll just quit it and go to another one. And they
Yeah.
didn't think anything was wrong with that.
Well, I think some of those folks may have a rude awakening. I think, again, back to 2022 as an example, that there was a year or two there where you could probably get another job pretty quickly based on your experience. And some people took advantage of that
Mhm.
and moved roles and then maybe moved roles again based on the circumstance. And then I think the market started, as it usually does, self-correcting. And I think that's kind of where we're at now. As companies are looking to hire, they're looking at your track record. They're looking at your commitment level. They're looking at your career growth. They're looking at the long term, and they want to make a hire for someone that's going to stay long term, not someone that's going to leave in 9 months or a year for a few $1,000s more. So ultimately, that stuff does matter. Back to kind of where the market was before COVID, it was important then too. Your career, history, your tenure, those things were important so that you didn't look like a job hopper or someone that just wasn't going to commit to a role. And so I think for some people they may have to reevaluate where they're at. And if you don't like your job, you may just need to stay there for a bit longer to get some tenure before you make another move. That just may be the right answer.
What do you say to those companies, whether they are big or small, Fortune 500, mom and pop or whatever, that are saying that they cannot find workers, Chad?
Mhm.
Like they have applied with you guys as a staffing company. They have put things in newspapers and on
Mhm.
Facebook and on
Sure.
social media, and they can't find workers and they can't keep workers.
Yeah, I think it does come back to the culture of your company, the flexibility that you may offer, the salary and the benefit package. Usually, one of those things is out of line if you're having a trouble either attracting talent or keeping talent. And so, as a company, you've got to constantly evaluate that and make sure that you're paying market rate, your benefits are market rate, you're offering a flexible work schedule so that people feel like they've got, some flexibility from that perspective, that you've got a good work culture, that people enjoy working at your company, that there's a shared mission and shared values. I think those are all things that are important. And so with those companies that we do work with, we're oftentimes giving them advice in terms of what we're seeing, or hey, you may want to up the salary range a bit. You may want to offer a bit more of a flexible schedule. You may want to look at this benefit. Usually those are some of the areas that need to be addressed.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chad. This has been so informative because, again, we were one way before March of 2020, and we're another way after March of 2025. 5 years since the pandemic struck, with the job market and just trying to get everybody back to kind of where we were before. How can people get in touch with Robert Half again if they are an applicant or if they
Yeah.
are a company looking for great applicants?
Yeah, great question. And I would say there's two easy ways. One, there's our website, roberthalf.com, or you can download our app. We have an award-winning app. If you're a candidate looking for a role, download our app. You can upload your resume. You can search and apply for jobs. It's very, very easy, quick. Someone from a local office will connect with you, and we'd love to work with you. Back to your other comment, I think a year from now, we may be looking at a completely different market again. Things are always changing. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
in today's market, these are some of the struggles. And in a year from now, there may be a whole different, set of struggles. But, be diligent in terms of your career, grow your network, get yourself out there, stay technology relevant. Those are all things that will help you in the long run.
All right. Chad Leibundguth, District President for Robert Half for Florida and Louisiana. Thank you so much for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you for joining us and watching Good Morning Miramar. Until next time, I'm your host, Tamara G. See ya.